back in the days during 2008 by Hack and Sean and a bunch of other volunteers. Until now, 2021, we have, I think, over 1,000 people across different social media platforms. And this is our fifth event. So we have presence on Zoom or even some of the hotshots on Clubhouse, yeah, two months ago. And so without further ado, let me just don't stop sharing. And our guest speaker today is Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, Amy is my friend. Back in the day, we both graduated from Simon Fraser University. And then she has a lot of experience working in tech startup. I'm really excited today because, you know, being the only designer like me working with tech startup, sometimes it could be, you know, kind of in a situation where you struggle, don't know how to do. And tonight is a real treat. If you guys wanted to work in tech startup, you would like it. I'm really excited. Amy, how about
thanks for the intro.
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah,
no worries. Can you tell everybody here a little bit about yourself? I heard you work with a lot of different companies before, including CryptoKitty. You have founded.
Yeah, so oh man, where's the best place? Well, Dan asked me to prep a quick slide, so this might actually tell a little bit more than just my words.
Yes.
Can you guys see?
Oh, perfect.
Just I only have like one slide, so that's okay. But yeah, so I my career, I would say, like officially started in 2010. But kind of for like 3 or 4 years there, I kind of worked everywhere. Like it was really hard as a junior to, you know, get a role. I know Elaine and I were talking about this before the call started, but like as a junior, it's like super, super tough. And so a way that I kind of overcame it was to do as much as possible. I worked at like super small marketing firms in Vancouver. I remember quitting like 3 months later. I worked for like another like software company, just doing miscellaneous design, and then eventually kind of like swapping over to more digital design. So I did a lot of marketing design. And then within that company, I've swapped a bit more to kind of digital product. I quit that also really quickly. I got an internship at Volkswagen in Germany. I had a really good friend that was working there at the time who was also an intern. So I applied. Fortunately, they needed someone who had good like art and drawing skills. I helped them do storyboarding. And like I learned a bit more kind of design and service design while I was there. When I came back, I couldn't find a job. So I actually worked at an Apple store for like a while. And the most fascinating thing about working there was understanding like how real users use things. So when you like sell an Apple product and you have to help them set up, people don't actually skip intro screens. They like read onboarding screens. And so that was really revealing in terms of like seeing real users in action. And then after that, I managed to apply to an agency called AKQA in San Francisco. So I worked there for another 3 months. That was in 2013. So all of that kind of culminated to me coming back and working for a company locally called Axiom Zen. So when we started, we were like 12 people. And since then, you know, we've done a ton of stuff, right? You know, I've helped launch more than like 10 MVPs, a bunch of actual like startups. I built a team. We started at about 3 when I joined, 3 designers to about 20 designers when I left. I think Summer, who's on the call, is one of them. So I'm no longer there, but she's still there. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Hi,
and these are some of the startups that I've helped either design for or help them do their MVP or something like that. And so really my career has just been about like doing as much as I can and learning as much as possible, so that, you know, by the time I get to a place where I'm like quite comfortable, I have the skills to apply at like Asana. So when Asana came to Vancouver, they were looking for a design manager who could be both manager and product designer. So there I kind of half my time was doing just regular product design, and the other half was like hiring, and whoever we hired I would manage, do one-on-ones, things like that. Eventually I realized that like the size of the company wasn't quite what I wanted. So I was like looking for another job. Fortunately, this kind of came in my inbox. So Thunkable, they reached out to me. So we're like a super, super tiny team by comparison. So we're like 15 full-time folks compared to Asana, which is like 700, which was like a bit overwhelming, especially, my kind of background is just like small teams. And so here I'm a product designer. I'm actually the only designer right now. Hopefully we can hire a few more, but yeah, also the design lead, I guess, de facto, but I lead a lot of the kind of product engineering and design. Like I sit in those meetings as well. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
There's a lot, right?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
Thunkable is a company that they do apps, sort of like Wix and Webflow, where
Mhm.
you can very easily to design a website, and Thunkable you can make apps and put it in the App Store, right?
Yeah, so Thunkable's a really interesting company. I think maybe like the best one-liner is like think of like Squarespace, but for apps. Like it's really hard to make iOS and Android apps,
Mm.
like with like no code, low code. The idea really is low code. When we think of things like Webflow, um, they're really like Webflow and I would actually say it's more like Webflow for apps more than Squarespace for apps, because it's really about you can program something that has like functions and variables and a database, and that's really cool. And so, yeah, I kind of joined seeing a lot of potential in the product. I think right now we've been like evolving slowly over the last little while. The company's been around for about 5 years. It kind of spun out of MIT. Um, Out of this, I think it was like a research project on how to like code without code. So it uses this thing called Blockly, and you kind of actually drag in blocks and you code your product. So as a designer, it's actually really cool because I don't have to learn a programming language. Like if I kind of understand like how programming kind of works, like sort of if then statements, like I can actually make an app and publish it to the App Store.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I'm there to do now is just like kind of help grow it so that the interface is a lot more usable, to focus it on a more design audience, and yeah, just overall like make it a better platform.
Right. Oh, can you back it up a little bit and tell people, because you have worked with a lot of tech startup before, and what was your major, perhaps your background at school to become who you are right now?
Yeah, so I think Daniel mentioned that I came out of SFU. I graduated in 2010. I did the interactive arts and technology program. I basically was like the second year there. So when we were all there, at this point, the school is quite established, has like a design program. But when we started, we like had no idea what we were doing. I actually joined because I wanted to do animation, which is why I have a bit of a drawing background. So yeah, I kind of did a bit of everything. I think probably the best thing I learned there was like design thinking. And so I guess the concept of design thinking, so applying that to urban design, architecture, wearables, graphic design. When I graduated, like the iPhone was barely a thing. And so I remember kind of trying to figure out where I like fit in terms of my skills, because like I wasn't a programmer, but a lot of the kind of UX jobs were like programming jobs.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I think that's why like I've had to do a lot of jobs kind of in like my early career, because I like just didn't know where my skills fit. And so it's kind of a blessing in disguise, because I got to like just do a lot and like learn a lot. And then because I was so young in my career, I just like wasn't afraid to quit. I was like, this is boring. I'm gonna do something else and learn something new. Or like, I'm working on or I'm like at a job and I'm like, well, maybe I can have a side hustle, And so, in your 20s, you're like, I could do all the things. So that's just what I did.
Oh, you know what? I know that in our community, we have a bit of career changer here, or they
Mhm.
have a designer with different disciplines. So if you can go back,
Mhm.
10 years ago, and what advice would you give little Amy that how could you how you could have done this better? because you have no idea what to do. And I'm sure a lot of people struggle too. Like, oh, I'm from a engineering background and I want to transfer into UX.
Yeah, I think it's to like understand what your strengths are. I think a lot of people like try and learn UX and they like try and learn all the kind of like checkbox skills. But the thing that like really made me stand out, like the reason I got my first like real service design internship was because I could draw. And so because I could draw, I managed like my whole role was to just do like storyboards. Yeah, Elaine and I were talking earlier about like, you know, junior designers and like why it's like so hard to get them hired. And really it's because when a company hires someone, a junior like can't really produce anything for like 4 to 6 months, right? Like, because there's so much to learn. And so if you can come in with like a skill that you can like apply right away, if it's like even something that's like not super related, like for me, it was like storyboarding. I just kind of came in and did that. I remember when I went to AKQA, like I think all I did for like a couple months was just like make wireframe. I was like super good at Illustrator. So I just like made wireframes really quickly. And so yeah, like I think just getting good at like a particular skill, especially if you're coming from a different industry, I think there's a lot of benefit to like putting two things together, like putting, I don't know, if you have like an economics background, like you could totally work in like a finance app, or if you have like an engineering background, like you're already well suited to work in tech because you understand the nuances of like how like programming works. I'm currently working with someone who's a front end developer who has an animation background. So that's really cool because she kind of understands like design and how things should feel. And so that's really helpful as well.
Oh, wow. So basically you guys can speak the same language of that. Have you heard about a thing called the UX bootcamp out there?
What?
A UX bootcamp.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man.
And I don't know if anybody here are doing UX bootcamps. If so, you can let us know here. What is your thought of this bootcamp super quick?
Oh man. Okay, yeah, I have lots of thoughts. I think boot camps are great if you can make the best out of it. And so what I mean is when you apply to a company, for the most part, recruiters will just look at like a checklist of things. Do they understand personas? Do they understand how to wireframe? Do they have projects that they can show? And so like, if you're not the kind of person who can do that on your own, like I'm not that kind of person to do it on my own. Like I need a company to work for, or like school to attend. And so a boot camp is really great because it gives you like 6 months to a year to just like hone a project and put it together. I think the failings of boot camps are just that it focuses, like, because they're so short, they focus so much on like the output, the technical output. And so people tend to forget 6 to 9 months is long. Okay, maybe like 3 months. I'm not super sure, but yeah, because of like the condensed timeline of boot camps, it's hard to like get really deep into something. And so I find when I look at portfolios from people from boot camps, they kind of all look the same because it's just like check boxes. And so for example, it's hard to like get iterations out of portfolios from boot camps. Like you just kind of have like a final product at the end. Like I want to see how you iterate on it.
Right.
It's sometimes actually they're doing a lot better job of teaching design thinking. So that's pretty good. That used to be a bit of a fault. And I think just like breadth of work, it's hard to see. But overall, like I think boot camps are great because
what are the typical portfolio that you are seeing day to day, which they look the same right now, or maybe some of us which are doing boot camps and doing portfolio can sort of like flag it. I don't want to be the same. Like, what are typical common features that you see?
Yeah, maybe I'll talk about like what stands out and like what doesn't stand out, which could be helpful.
Yeah.
So things that I see often are in this like super long blog page, right? There's like a ton of writing.
Right.
You have to design your like portfolio the way that you would design like an interface. I like to think of it in like time. If a recruiter has like 5 seconds to look at it, what are they looking at? If they have 30 seconds, what are they looking at? If they have like 5 minutes to dig into it, what do they have? Right. So if there's like this huge blog, it's like, I'm a recruiter, I've got like 50 of these to look through. I don't have like 5 minutes for each person. I have like 10 seconds for each person. So the thing I see often is like there's too much writing. Another thing I see often, and this is fine, right? Like, you know, usually it's like, this is my persona. This is my user journey framework. These are my a bit too pretty wireframes and sketches. Like they're always really pretty for some reason. And then here's like my final product, and here's like a prototype from InVision, right? I think the thing that we want to see more often is like the iteration and like the thinking of like, how did one thing lead to another, lead to another, lead to another. Some of the best portfolios, like this isn't necessarily for bootcamp, but some of the best portfolios that I see are where people stop and from an app that they're building, they actually break out like a particular micro interaction, or they break out a flow that's been really difficult for them. And like, this is how they iterated through it. They show like GIFs of things as opposed to like an InVision link where I'm like, I'm not going to click on this like external InVision link. But if you can like take a GIF of it and you can like actually show me what it kind of looks like, that's like way more powerful. So those are some of the things I see often in portfolios.
Right. Do you think if a designers really have to have a portfolio in order to land a job?
Okay, so this is a very particular question. Everyone's gonna ask you for everyone's gonna ask you for work. If you're like a senior, you can kind of get away with not having like an online like an online like amyngai.com kind of like here's all my work kind of thing. But yes, I think you do need a portfolio of some sort. So the presentation kind of depends on, I don't know, it's kind of, so, okay. So for me, for example, like I have a portfolio, but it's a Figma slideshow deck. And so it is accessible online. I don't have it on my website currently, but if recruiters reach out to me, I will send them this portfolio. And so the benefit of having this presentation is that it's like super curated. It's meant exactly for that company. I take out projects, I put in projects depending on the company that I'm applying to.
So you tailor made the project for that particular interview.
Yeah. So I remember when I was looking for a job like a little ways back. I had probably like, I don't know, like 7 different versions of like the same like portfolio, and they're all just like minor differences, right? It's just like they were presented slightly differently. The orders of the projects were slightly differently. Some of the projects didn't exist because it didn't matter. Some of them were a bit more like management focused. Some of them were a bit more like designer project focused. That's kind of what I mean. I think for more junior designers, it's hard to have that nuance because there just hasn't been that much stuff. And so I think it's more like, how can you put your work in like the best light possible? So let's say you're a product designer, but you're actually really good at like logos and whatnot. Put that up. The other thing that I've seen is the opposite, is like there's designers and they're like, I've made logos before. And it's just like the smattering of logos that like isn't very consistent and is like, okay. And I'm like, well, if you're not super proud of it, don't put it on. But if you're proud of this project, like really make it shine. So yes, I do think you need a portfolio of some sort. But yeah, it kind of depends on the application.
Right. Hi, Bianca. Nice to see another SFU folks here. And what is the best amount of portfolio project on the website? I've seen some, they have 6, they have like 4, and then what do you think is the best amount of project?
Yeah, it sort of depends on kind of the breadth that you want to show. So I think for me, I had like 2 main projects, and I think I had like 4 supplemental projects.
Right.
And then, I mean, think of it in like the eyes of the designer or eyes of the interviewer. Like again, you don't have that much time. I'm like looking at one project. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I'll look at another project that's like somewhat different, so I can get some different skills. Okay, that's also really interesting. You can kind of look at some of the other ones, and like that these other ones are a bit older, but I'm kind of looking for, as the interviewer, I'm looking for, how did you apply different skills? Does your process seem consistent throughout? Yeah, I think things like that. So anywhere from like
here's another thing I'm quite curious. First, do you think Vancouver we have a lot of tech startup?
It's getting there, not like a lot, but
right. For those who wants to work for tech startup, do we necessarily to have a tech background or very good at drawings like you?
No, not necessarily.
Because I know you interview a lot of people too in your previous job, and you used to be a manager and design lead. And if I don't have any tech background, but I really want to have that tech startup vibe, and then I want to try working with a very lean team. What are your tips or maybe advice to some of the folks here?
Yeah, tips to join a startup, or tips like once you're in a startup?
Join a startup. When we don't even have a tech background, what are they looking for?
Oh man, that's tough. It kind of depends on the size and the maturity, I think, of the company. So a lot of small companies, I'll be quite honest here, like a lot of really small companies can't like afford to hire like a senior. And so oftentimes they'll look for like mid-levels or juniors to like just kind of help them with things. And so a lot of those startups like aren't super sure what they're looking for. And so if you can sell yourself and your skills, like that's great. And so selling yourself and your skills kind of means like you're confident in design, you're confident in your process. You have a couple of projects to kind of show that you can like do the work.
Yeah.
And then I think that'll get you in the door. For companies that are a bit more mature, unfortunately, in my experience, a lot of startups that are a bit more mature are mostly looking for that kind of like mid-level to senior level. Usually what they're looking for in a mid-level is someone who's like done a lot of product design work. They like understand flow, they understand wireframes, they understand prototyping. They kind of have done it and get it, and they really want them like in the door to just like build out their new like checkout flow or something.
What are the top 3 soft skills or top 3 hard skills do you think junior designer need to get in that door?
So to get in the door?
Yeah, so we can just go. We can just go in there with the hard skill or soft skills that you want and start right away.
Yeah, I would say like confidence, openness, and I think like the ability to kind of like, I don't want to say process, but like put things together in a way, like insight to be insightful.
Be able to connect dots, like you say.
Yeah, like kind of connect the dots. Like I think a thing. So when I joined Thunkable, it was kind of interesting. They were telling me about my interview process, and then they were like, "Amy, you were like the only person who tried out our platform." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, you're interviewing for a company and you like don't even try out their platform." Like, so I had a lot of opinions about Thunkable before I actually like had the interview, and a lot of people just don't even do that. They like go to a company and they like don't know what the product is, and then so like the layer above that is kind of like a bit of insight. It's like, oh, I've used the product and like here's some like opinions about it that I have. And then kind of like the openness is just like, it's like a little bit collaboration. It's a little bit like how can you get along with people? Can you recognize your own faults? It's not really openness, but yeah, one of those soft skills.
So confidence and then openness, and then be able to connect the dots together. Perhaps do your homework before you go to interviews.
Yeah, do your homework.
What are the hard skills? Like, I mean, what are the hard skills that you're looking for when you're hired for junior designers? especially, let's say they're coming out from a boot camps or they're coming out with a degree? What are the hard skills do you think in trend they have to learn it?
Yeah, I would say I'm gonna lump like product design chops into like one. I'm gonna consider like communication kind of a hard skill because it is like a thing that you have to have, and I'm gonna consider collaboration like a hard skill as like a thing you kind of have to have because there's a lot of tactics that go around communication and collaboration. So at the beginning of this, you talked about like I work remote, fully remote with a company in SF, and so some of like the tactical skills that I have for communication is I'm always telling people what I'm doing. I'm always messaging people like, hey, this is what I'm working on. Hey, I need help from you. I try and always keep like my video on when I'm like in calls. I try and like write out things that are decisions. Like those are very tactical. In terms of like collaboration, it's like, how do I bring the right people into the room? How do I organize workshops? How do I get insight from people? And then of course the design skills, right? So like, can you prototype? Can I put like a page together? Do I have a basic understanding of like, in interaction design and visual design, like just kind of the core basics. Like you don't have to be like an amazing visual designer, but can I put things together so that they like look decent? It's
Okay.
kind of good enough. Like I think if you have the communication and collaboration, you're already like way ahead of like other designers.
Right. I know a lot of designers, they like to work in the dark room. Like they work in silo and then they will make the best craft out of it. And then they
Yeah.
will be like, I'm Andy Warhol, yay.
Yeah.
Like, and what is your thought on that one?
Yeah, that's like so hard. Getting like today I had a feedback session where I was like making this like onboarding screen, right? It's like 3 screens, it's super relaxed, and I got like a page full of feedback because I had like a design feedback session. And it
Right.
just like hurts. It's like, okay, I'm taking, and I've been working for 10 years, right? And like this feedback hurts. And so I just have to like breathe a little and it's like, oh, this is actually good feedback. And then I like read through it. I'm like, oh, okay. Like some people are really opinionated, but like what they're saying is good.
Hmm.
And so, uh, oh my goodness, wait, what was the original question?
I know you're too mad. Yeah, it's definitely that's an artist like Andy Warhol. Maybe it's wrong
Oh,
example, but
working
I
in the
do.
dark room.
But yeah, but I do see people. They are so hold on to their work, and
Yeah.
then they think the teammate is enemy.
So that's the thing, right? So the whole feedback thing is like the teammate isn't the enemy. Like everyone wants to make a good product at the end of it. And like what I find is a lot of people hold on to things because they don't want to be criticized. And like I also don't want to be criticized, but yeah, like over the last 10 years, I've just learned to like take the criticism, breathe heavy, and be like, I'm fine. And then
Uh,
at the end of it, it's like everyone's good and you end up with a better product in the end ultimately. Like actually before this call, I like wasn't done a design, and I just like took a screenshot and just posted it, and I like knew it wasn't going to be good, and I knew there's going to be probably like feedback of like, why does this look so weird? But I'm like, I'll just do it anyways just so that it's like there, because that accomplishes a couple things. Like one, it kind of gets it out of your head,
mm,
and then two, it gives other people opportunity to kind of like look at it, and they might give you feedback on like stuff that you haven't thought of. And then actually the last thing is like it just gives clarity to people on like what you're actually doing, because like you said, like a lot of people just like work in a black box because they're like, oh no, it's not done yet, it's not done yet, I don't want to get
mm,
criticism.
yeah.
But I think ultimately, like, when you show it to people, getting feedback will make it better. It'll like always make it better.
I know you have a product design background before in Axiom Zen,
Mhm,
when you're working with a lot of MVPs,
mhm,
such as Routific and then ZenHub,
mhm.
also CryptoKitty, which later on is the Dapper Lab. What was some of your struggle on your path as a junior product designer,
Mhm.
slowly becoming who you are? What are some of the obstacles that you have experienced before?
Yeah, so I think decision making was like the hardest thing to figure
Oh,
out. And so I
yeah.
mean, oh man, I remember like we had chatted about this before, but we talk a lot about like imposter syndrome. It's like, oh, I'm not good enough to make this decision, especially as like a junior designer at like like a tech startup, it's like, oh, who am I? And you like, and so one of the things I had to overcome was like constantly asking other people what they thought of the design. It's like, oh, is it good enough? And I like needed the validation from like my boss or like a more senior person. But when you're at a startup, like there is no senior person. You are the senior person. And so like being able to make decisions was like a really hard lesson. And I remember very vividly, I think it was like, I was like 6 months into working at Axiom Zen. And then I think I made this design and I was just like, we're just going to ship it. We're just going to do this design. I'm like fairly confident that it's going to work because I understand the users. I understand what we're trying to do. I made some prototypes that I've tested internally, that I've tested with some like of my coworkers. I did some like internal guerrilla testing. So I'm like pretty confident. I'm like, we'll just go with it. And so I just kind of rolled with that for like the rest of my career is like, we'll just do this thing. I'll go in with confidence. Especially because I've done my homework. And if someone comes in and says like, oh, why don't we do it this and this way? It's like, either A, that's like a really good suggestion. I hadn't thought about it. Or two, like they haven't done their homework and thank you for this opinion, but it doesn't really matter because it doesn't relate to our user in the way that we want it to. So yeah, so.
Oh, I'm curious, where did you get your confidence from? Because you mentioned that you tested many times and then you know your customers. Like what did you do to gain that confidence?
Yeah, I think the more you understand your user, the more confident you will be that you're making the right decision. The more you can prototype, the more you can show your users the designs that you're making, the more you know that they're like right. So if you like don't ever prototype and you don't ever show your users and you don't talk to people about your designs, like you just never know that it's going to be right. Like a thing that I hear a lot now with designers is like, I think, people will design something. It's like, oh, we'll just like test it now. Like we do that a lot at my company. And I think a lot of other companies do it. It's like, oh, well, I guess we'll just test it. And so I think that's like a good evolution is people are like, oh, I don't know if it's right, but I don't know, we'll build it. We'll get some feedback on it. So
that is so true. You fail faster and then you know your mistake and you become successful faster.
Yeah. I think the thing that people fail to do is planning for the step after launch. A lot of people, PMs are notorious for this, right? They're like, when can we launch it? And they're like, I don't know, like give me like 3 weeks. It's like, okay, cool. We've like done our testing. We have a prototype that we talked to a couple of users. We like launch it. And then immediately they're like, okay, next feature. When are we going to ship our next feature? Right. And then a thing I remember when we were at Dapper, we really tried to make time for kind of that post MVP or that post feature launch. Like how do we kind of improve on what we did? So I remember we ended up taking like an entire week after the MVP, and we just did like an audit of that, of like all the flows, and we're like, what do we not like? What looks inconsistent? What are we going to fix? Even at Thunkable now, I think one of the things I did early on was just like a design audit. And so that became like that quarter's goal, is just like fixing all the things and making sure the things that we didn't catch, we do catch. So if you have the opportunity, I think that's like a really good, I know a lot of people don't have that opportunity and you have like managers who like kind of set the schedule. But if that's something you can advocate for, I would highly recommend it.
Advocate. Yeah. Oh, I like that keyword. How do you as a, a single designer in the team, like advocate your opinion to your stakeholders or even your boss? Like, how do you back yourself up when somebody from a department and say, we need to make more money, or
so actually that's kind of funny because that's like a thing I remember. If anyone has ever worked in sales, the way to sell something isn't to like list a bunch of features. It's like, who is this person I'm selling to? What are their needs, and how do I like kind of sell them their needs back to them? And this was like a thing when I like worked at the Apple Store. That was like the other thing that I learned, was like how to sell people not on the features, but sell them on like their values and their needs. And so when talking to stakeholders, it's like the same thing. Like if you talk to like a business stakeholder, they care about like how much money is this going to make for them. And so you have to kind of advocate your designs towards that. And then, you know, like if you talk to someone in marketing, they might not care about the nuances of like how this like billing thing, like they're not going to care that like billing is complicated. They're just going to care that they can like put a promo code in so that, you know, like their customers can like input promo codes. And so a thing to show maybe like that person who cares about billing is like, oh, actually promo codes. And you kind of like list out the complexities of promo codes. Well, you know, you can have like a one-time promo code. You can have this like promo code that like, you can tell that I'm working on billing right now. You can tell that, you know, or like this promo code, it applies every month as like a lifetime thing. And so they understand the complexity that you're dealing with, but in like how, in like words that they care about. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I remember last month, and then we had another. Okay, I remember last month we had another guest speaker, and then she was saying, "Oh yeah, at Netflix we have like a no asshole rule that we don't hire assholes." And so at your case, what if, or maybe have you ever worked with a difficult person to deal with before? And then what if, oh my God, if I'm working in a team that really is the person that I find it hard to deal with, what is your strategy?
Yeah, I feel,
How,
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if like I'm difficult to deal with, but I don't know. But
how
but
other people deal with you then?
I don't know, man. But I think the thing that is usually the most difficult is when people don't know how to communicate. Because no, I'd like to think that people aren't evil, you know, like you're hired because you can like do a job and like you don't mean any ill will. And so you might think they're an asshole, but maybe they just think they're being straightforward. Like maybe they're like, you know, you're working with an engineer who's like, you know, I can't do that thing. And it's like, well, why are you being so closed? Why can't you make this design? And it's like, maybe they just have a bunch of other things happening at the same time. And they looked at the design, they're like, this is too complicated. I like can't do it in like the timeline. And so rather than like explain all that, they're just like, we can't do it. And so I guess for me, it's like, I like to practice like forgiveness. It's like, okay, well, why are you telling me that you can't do it? Okay, how can we break this down so that you can do it? Okay, let's actually align on like the goal. Do we both think that the goal is the same? It's like, okay, if we do think the goal is the same, how can we make it work? So yeah, usually like a communication thing.
Yeah, those are difficult, conversation that I hope nobody here's need to deal with on the day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I've had a lot of like tough conversations. Like I've had a lot of like where I've had to pull someone aside. We've had like a one-on-one and I've kind of had to tell them like how I felt in the moment. I can't remember. There's like an acronym for this. It's like situation, something like STAR or something like that. But it's where you talk about the situation and then you talk about like how it made you feel, because that's really important. Like how you feel is very legitimate. And then kind of like expectations, things like that. I can't remember exactly the acronym. It probably is like STAR or something like that. Something action result or something like that. But yeah, like and generally for the most part, they've been great. Like actually a lot of the people that I found really difficult to work with early on ended up becoming some of my closest collaborators because we like got over that like communication barrier and we like worked really well together. There's been a couple of times where it hasn't worked, and like thinking about that, it hasn't worked because the other person wasn't open with me, right? They were like super defensive. They were like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. And in that case, like it's kind of hopeless in some ways. It's like super tough. You should bring it to like a manager. You need to give feedback for that person because like that's not cool. You have to work together. But yeah, generally every time I've had like a one-on-one, It's been really great. Star method. Yes. Thank you for
Star
that.
method.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank
I
you.
see so many questions that I really want to answer on the sidebar, but maybe we'll do that
Really?
later.
Okay, okay. We haven't done yet. Okay. We'll get to your part. Okay. Uh, and yes, how about we talk about some of the insights from you, how to succeed in startups. For example, you talk about prototypes, right?
Mm-hmm,
Or you know how UX keep changing
mm-hmm,
every years?
mm-hmm,
Maybe when we were back in the day when we graduated, UX wasn't even a thing in Vancouver.
mm-hmm.
How do you stay up to trend, or how do you hone your skills, even though you're designer?
Yeah. I have I have on my new tab. Um, I like to have this thing called Panda, and so it just opens like designer news and like TechCrunch and like Product Hunt, and so just getting like articles often is really nice. Like I get I think like Medium sends me articles every so often, and so I don't always read them, but like seeing the headline is like, oh, is this something I should dig into? So that's like a good way to kind of keep up to date. Um, Going to
Mm.
conferences is always interesting. I find
IxDA,
yeah,
because
shout out.
I
They're really good. I remember when I started my career, there was like this new thing called service design, and so we were like, "Ooh, what is that?" But like the kind of technical stuff, I think, like if you're at a company, like you should know the nuances of that technology, and so. You know, when I was working at Dapper Labs, like I had to understand blockchain. Like I had to be to the point where I could explain it to other people. And so I mean, this method is probably not good for everyone, but like I ended up just like presenting to others on like what blockchain was. I also ended up doing a lot of because I had a team that I had to work with. So every time I had to like explain something about how like private keys worked, I actually drew a diagram and I like put it in our onboarding notes. And so our onboarding doc, anytime someone joined our project, basically had like, well, what is our project? What does blockchain mean? What is a blockchain wallet? What is a secure key? Like,
oh.
and then by like illustrating and drawing this stuff out, I really got into it. And so you have to like really understand the technology. Like right now, working in Thunkable, I'm like looking at how like Xcode works, not the nuances like how to develop it, but just understanding if a developer is coming from like Xcode and they're coming to our platform, how can we take that kind of base knowledge of like, I know sort of how to program, but I'm just going to make it easier for you. So just understanding that technology and doing a deep dive is like really good to like you can't like design in a bubble. Like the other things I've seen is like designers will take inspiration from like design tools, and like you can't always do that. Like you have to take inspiration from um, maybe like the industry that you're designing in. You can maybe like look at some other industries that have like similarities. Like so when we were designing a blockchain wallet, I remember looking at like how banking did it, and we were looking at how did different banks get people to understand like their privacy and like teach people about privacy. We looked at other products that had to do with like security, and so we just kind of like cross-referenced that way, just like a ton of research.
I see. I heard that somebody told me, no, actually you told me, you have worked with the guy who created Dogecoin before.
Oh yeah, his name's
Or
Ross.
did. Yeah, and I hope no one gets too much Bitcoin a couple months ago. But hey, anyways, how do you feel like you learned something from your tech colleague or from other team to understand the technology?
Yeah.
And
When you when you work at a company, your engineers are your best friends because they like know way more than you. And so I remember there were several times where I would just like sit down with an engineer. I'm like, all right, just talk at me. Just like tell me all the things you know about this like technology. And that was great. So yeah.
right, that's cool. Yeah, and do you think, as a designer, it's good to be a generalist or a specialist nowadays?
Yeah, so that's kind of tough. I know people talk a lot about like being a T person, and so a T person is like
What does it mean, deep person?
You have like a breadth of knowledge, but you're like really deep in something that you know you're really good at. And so, you know, when we think of like the breakdown of like design, on the one end there's like research, and
Mm,
on the other hand, on the other end there's like branding and visual design, and there's like all this stuff in between, right? Like typically we'll say UX designers around here, UI designers here, product designers, like a little bit of both. I understand where your skills are,
mm,
so that's kind of important. So I know for me, my visual design skills are fine. I can't really put together my own branding. Like I can put together a pretty basic branding, but I wouldn't call myself an art director. um, I can do research, but that's not what I do every day. Like I can do research and run research sessions, but I'm not a researcher. So I like to say I'm kind of quite in that middle. I like to say I'm a bit more of a UX designer because I do a lot more flows. I create a lot of prototypes. I design in black and white, like a lot. And so if I have like a brand, I can like put that together pretty well.
mm.
Um, but yeah, so that's kind of what I mean by like the T skills is
Yeah.
like just kind of know sort of how to do everything. Um, the worst is saying like, oh, I don't do that. Right. Like there's some people who are like UX designers who's like, oh, I don't touch visual design at all. And it's like,
Oh,
well, understand how to like put layouts together. That's really important. Or like if a visual designer, like, oh, I don't do research. It's like,
oh,
well, you should like probably sit into an interview a couple times.
whoa, okay. Remember, one of the top three soft skills is you have to be open-minded, right?
Minded. There you go.
Yes, yes. Well, as a manager right now, of course, being a knowing a lot is much more important. As a junior designer, in a tech startup company environment, do they look for generalists, or do they more looking into a person who can really good at one thing?
Yeah, usually tech startups, they look for someone who can design a flow. And so, um, well, if they're looking for a product designer, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for someone who can come in and like put together like a billing page,
Hmm.
and or like come in and like make a feature. Um, so it's kind of I think earlier I talked about the portfolio. I find it really interesting when someone breaks down the flow for me, and that's because most companies, you're never working on like the entire product unless you're like the only designer. And so and you're not often making like an MVP of a product. And so in a portfolio, it's actually way more interesting to see how you broke down like one part of that flow. So like, let's say, I don't know, you're making like a delivery app. Like, okay, well, what does that delivery experience look like? um, what does it look like on like the app side? What does it look like on, when we look at service design, it's like, well, what does like the other side look like? Because there's someone setting up deliveries, and then there's a person like receiving the delivery. Are there like two apps? Like, that's really interesting. Is there like a database involved? That's really interesting.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think yeah, so like going into a company, that's what they want to see, is that you can like take a feature and like kind of make it end to end.
Gotcha, gotcha. Great. I think there's a lot of message in the chat box right now. And what do you say? We're going to the Q&A section. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Well, yeah, just before we get into that, I know that I almost forgot to mention that we do have a Facebook group and then a LinkedIn group uh, for IxDA Vancouver. And then if you want to keep in touch with us or let us know how we are doing, if you like it, of course, if this is a YouTube video, I would have said just give us a thumbs up or subscribe. But feel free to follow us. We have tons of good events every month. And okay, so who should we invite to the stage and ask the questions?
Should we
And
just go up the chat? I think there's some.
yeah, I think somebody is helping me out right now. And team, can you back me up, Jasmine?
Yeah. First question was from Bianca.
Yeah, Bianca, hello. Would you like to turn on your camera and then ask your questions so you can get to interact with Amy firsthand?
Hi.
Hi.
Hey there.
Yeah, so yeah, I recently graduated from CEAT like last fall.
Whoa.
Woohoo. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of in the same boat when you started. I love doing digital art. I wanted to go to animation school, but my parents were like, nah. So like, I was wondering if it would like, I guess, help me stand out more in my portfolio if I maybe put some of my like art pieces on there or something. Cause like I hear mixed things about that. It's like only keep it to stuff that's like relevant to your field versus like just put anything that I guess that makes you look good.
Yeah, I think that's where like designing your portfolio comes in handy. And so I would say like, I don't know, if we're looking at like a web page, like the top couple things or maybe your main projects. And then you can totally put it at the end and be like, other things I'm interested in. I've on many occasions like looked at portfolios and then like scroll down a little bit and they're like other things I do. And I'm like, oh wow, they're like really good at like illustration and like this other stuff. And like sometimes it comes in handy. So I would encourage you to put it up. Maybe not like everything, you know, maybe like curate a couple pieces and you can like put it at the bottom or put it at the end. It's like, because it shows like, hey, this is all the stuff I can do as well. So.
Oh yeah, because I have like my 3 main projects and then I have some like design exploration stuff that's not like directly related to UX, but I think it's still like cool.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Don't waste your talent. Yeah, put it out.
Will do.
Yeah, and then we have the next question from Jackie.
Jackie? Hi, Jackie.
I know Jackie.
Yeah.
Jackie, this is a rhetorical question, isn't it?
Hi. Oh, sorry. I was just trying to unmute. No, I just wanted to ask your opinion on, you know, if anyone can become a designer.
I would say yes. Like I think design skills are learnable. It's like how people are like, oh, you know, like art is so subjective. I'm like, no, art's like you can not art maybe per se, but like design is like pretty objective. Like you can tell what a good design is because it's like usable, it's clear, it's it gets you, it helps you like accomplish the thing. So yeah, I would say like anyone who kind of learns those skills can be a designer. Actually, that comes, I think someone else mentioned like something with PMs. Like I think I talked about PMs earlier. Like I actually do enjoy when PMs and engineers give me like design advice because maybe they saw something that like I didn't see. And I'm going to think that I know better, but I do appreciate the feedback and the advice.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, next we have Tian Shi.
Hey there. I think my question was because you came from different like backgrounds, like you said, you worked in Volkswagen and then you went to some other startups. I'm just wondering because since you kind of experienced both, like larger companies and smaller, which would you recommend for someone that's kind of graduating to kind of apply for? Like, do you recommend joining a startup, or do you think it's better to go for like a larger company?
Yeah, actually, I would say that joining a bigger company is better, only because there's so many more resources dedicated to helping someone who's a junior. Whereas what I found when I've talked to people who were junior starting in startups was it was just so difficult. And they did so many things that weren't design things. Whereas at a big company, you basically just do design things all day because you're basically just like a tiny cog in like this like giant machine that is the design company. The danger is to get stuck. Like the danger is you end up working at, you know, you start as like a junior in this like big company and then you like slowly move up and you slowly move up. And then eventually you like make enough money where you're like kind of comfortable. You're like, why would I leave? But then you kind of get to that point, and I've seen this in like a lot of friends of mine, is like, they want to leave, but they don't have the skills because they've only stayed at that one company. And because they're making a decent amount of money, they're like, I'm too afraid to leave because I don't have the skills, but I want to leave because I'm not happy here. So that's the danger of like going to a big company. So that's just something to be aware of because I've seen it a lot, like people just getting stuck and then wanting to leave and like not having the skills.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. That was a good question.
And Caitlin?
Hey, yeah, thank you so much for this talk. It's been really helpful. So I'm switching over to UX design from interior design. I ran my own company for the last 3 years. And one of my case studies, I decided to kind of follow through, and it's half coded in Swift right now. And I was just wondering, as far as interviewing for UX design positions, where would you start? Would you start as a junior? Would I need to start, would I only interview as a junior designer, or could I apply for mid-level positions?
Yeah, I think it
Any
depends.
suggestions?
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of tough, because you like have the skills, like you have a lot of the soft skills and the experience, but like you might not have some of the hard skills, which is probably what's happening. I mean, I wouldn't be afraid to like apply for mid-level decision or mid-level design positions if you feel confident that you have the skills for it. The thing, I mean, I've like had several discussions with some of my friends who I think are on the call where this is a bit weird to say, a lot of women kind of undersell their skills because they like apply for the jobs that think is written for them, and really you should apply for the job that you think you can do. So if you think you have the skills for it, I would say go for it. And then if you're like really not getting hits, just like apply everywhere. And if you do get a junior position, like don't be afraid to like ask for more things to do so you can get more responsibility so that you can go up really fast, or don't be afraid to like quit, because then you have the skills and then you can like quit and like get a better job. Like that's kind of what I did in my early career, is like I just like got a job so that I could like get some experience, and then I like on the side kept looking for other jobs, and then I would find a better job, and like just kind of.
As far as having like a resume and stuff, would it be better to have an internship going into application process?
Yeah, internships help because they really give you like a taste of like what you're going to do. And then a lot of internships, there's like a mentor that's meant to like teach you and support you. They like know that you're junior. So that's why internships are like super great. And then they're like 3 months, you'll like learn a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. I really appreciate it. This has been really helpful.
No worries. If I can jump in really quick. So in terms of the imposter syndrome, like we just talked about during the fireside chat, what is your best tips to get over that syndrome?
To get over imposter syndrome, I mean, sometimes it's like really hard to get over. I mean, I know a lot of seniors who like still have a lot of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know, like the way that I've overcome it is just like know what I know really well, and then be open to like criticism and feedback. Like I think like imposter syndrome usually kind of comes from when there's like the fear that someone's going to call you out for not knowing something. So if you kind of accept the fact that like you don't know everything, then it kind of makes it a little bit better. And so I think that's kind of for me. I got to the point where I had enough like base design skills where I'm like, I'm a designer, like I'm a professional designer. People pay me to do this every day. And then also just like someone's going to call me out for it. And I'm just going to say like, thanks for the feedback. I'm going to listen to it. I'm not perfect, but that's okay. I'm learning.
I think that's a really great mentality. Yeah. But once you let go and accept the fact that, we're not perfect, and then we're still growing every day, and it just makes it so much more like easy to let go and just move on. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna step back, and who else?
We have Crystal.
Hi, Crystal.
Hello, Amy. Hi. So I have a question. Like I hear a lot of people who first get into tech startups because, they just don't have a choice, because they just need to land their first job as a UX designer. And then most of the time, they always just end up doing something like what you said earlier. They're doing a lot of things that are totally outside of their brief, their position. But at the end of the day, they still want to do some user research work. So how do they convince the boss or the stakeholders that, hey, like, at least let me do a little bit of research, like how, especially in the tech startup. So how do you, what kind of tips do you have for everyone to convince?
This is a funny question. I think the way that I've always gotten over it, or like that I've learned to get over it, is you don't really convince them. You basically just tell them that you need to get it done. And so a bunch of the things that I've done in like the last couple of years of my career, I'm just like, oh, this process is broken. You know what? Let's actually just do this thing. And they'll be like, oh, I guess so. And if you're doing the work, they're not going to say no. But if you're asking them for time, and time is money, of course they're going to say no. So a good way to do it is to say, like, come with a plan. You know, let's say you're designing something, let's say you're designing a new feature, and like you feel like you need design research involved, and you like can't just like pull out a thing. Just like make a plan. Say like, hey, here's this thing. I'm not sure that this is right. Here's the questions that I want to ask some of the users. I think we need to, you know, maybe put together like 5 to 10 users so that I can interview them. I'll make a prototype for this session. This session is going to be maybe like 30 minutes. It's going to be a call. And so for them, it's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because you need to design this feature and we like don't know what the solution is. We have a hypothesis. Oh, okay, here's a research plan.
Yeah. Are they willing to pay for the incentives usually, the research incentives?
Most of the time, yeah. I find like if you have a plan ready, because typically stakeholders just like don't want to make decisions because they're so busy. And so if you can take over that decision making and you can do the work, generally you can like get a lot of things done. I find when things don't get done, it's because someone's just like asking for permission. And so it's like, hey, can I take this like 5 hours out of my day to like do this other thing? And it's like, no, you've got these other things to do.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? You know,
yeah, that's a great
harder
tip.
sell.
Because I hear people like complain and be like, my boss doesn't understand what I'm doing. I'm just basically doing UI every day. But that's a good tip. Yeah, like just be proactive, basically.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Kevin.
Hi, do you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, it's kind of related to, I guess, the previous question, but like I'm kind of in that boat where I'm trying to recruit users. Are there like any strategies you would have for recruiting like existing users in a product?
Oh, okay. It sort of depends. So if the product exists already, there's probably users that exist. And so the easiest way is to like send an email blast. Well, there's a couple of ways. So if the product has like a forum, you can like, those are already engaged users. So you can put a post, say like, hey, we're doing user research. Does anyone want to join? If you don't have a forum, or if you don't have a place where customers are already, you can send out an email to your users and say like, hey, we're doing this thing. We'll give you like a $20 Amazon gift card if you participate, and then people can sign up. People love Amazon gift cards. If it's like a brand new project where you don't have either of those things, there are like recruiting firms online. Oh, I can't think of any off the top of my head because we just had them when we were at work. I felt very privileged. But I'm pretty sure if you just kind of Google like user testing recruiting, I know like usertesting.com has that, but that's like a part of their whole thing.
That's kind of, I'm trying to like figure out like the plan, and then like what you said, like if you have a plan and be proactive about it, then they'll more likely to offer the incentives. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Do you have more questions?
Kevin, you had a second question if you'd like to ask.
Kevin?
It was about
Yeah, so I was just wondering, since like when you're looking at like portfolios, if if the person I'm on my first job, and I guess all my projects would be from this company, like how do you view those portfolios versus someone who has like so many like companies and different projects?
Yeah, I think it's about the variety of like problems that you solve more than like the companies. And so like if I look at a portfolio where you've like kind of done the same thing over and over, like I haven't seen any new skills. But some of the successful ones, they're like, oh, I did like this new feature that was like quite big that involved like a lot of research. And then there was this like other one that was like a really small like micro interaction that they had to do. And then one where they had like a lot of collaboration between like internal stakeholders. Like these are 3 very different projects with like different problems. Those are also really interesting to look at. Just make
Awesome.
sure there's like variety and you show off your skills.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
And then we had some questions from Elaine, but she just left out. I can ask it for her. So what is your suggestion for 3-month boot campers who thought they could change careers in 3 months and find it difficult to find a job?
I know. Any internship volunteering opportunities? Oh, oh man, is like the questions towards the fact that they like did a 3-month boot camp and like now they're trying to find a job and it's hard.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah. Oh man, that's just hard. Finding it. Okay, here's the thing. Here's the real talk. Finding a job is hard. Like when I was looking for my last job, I think I probably, and like mind you, like I've been working in tech for probably like 7 years now, and I've been a designer for like 10 years now, and I had like over 20 interviews, and I had like, I think some of them didn't make it past a couple of rounds, but of the ones that I made it through the rounds, I had like 9 rejections, you know, by the end. I got like to the end, and like it hurts so much. And I think ultimately, like you're gonna find a job that will work for you. It doesn't mean you can't put in the work. Like for me, when I was a junior, I remember I actually had to remake my portfolio several times because the one that I was sending out, I just didn't get any hits on it. And then when I like looked at it with a, you know, more kind of like critical eye, I'm like, it looks so boring. Like it's like a really basic junior portfolio. And so I like made myself a new logo, and I like tried to design it in like the best way that I could. And I kind of tried something a bit new, and I got a few more hits on that. And so that was great. But yeah, like job searching is like super hard because ultimately, you know, there's like the one job and there's like a bunch of different people. And if that one person has like maybe, you know, it's like, let's say it's like a finance job and like maybe they've worked in finance before, they automatically have like a heads up to you who like maybe hasn't worked in finance.
How did you found Thunkable? Did they reach out to you, or you found them?
Yeah, so I mean, so the lucky thing about being a senior is like you'll get a lot of recruiters coming to you. So actually, my best tip is like the higher you get in your career, just keep your LinkedIn up to date. Like I know there's people who just like they have a job and they just like don't keep their LinkedIn up to date, and they're like, whatever, I like won't do that. My LinkedIn is always super up to date, so I constantly get like recruiters reaching out to me, and so I just gotta keep them warm. I say thank you for reaching out. No, I'm not looking for a job right now, but if I am looking for a job, I'll reach out back to them. Sometimes they'll know people. There's people that maybe had pinged me before that I wasn't interested, and I'll just kind of reach back out to them again. So that's kind of how I did it.
And I also noticed that you like to keep really good relationship with anybody reach out to you, even though they're not a recruiter.
Yes. Having really good relationships is so important. Jackie, who asked a question earlier, is a good friend of mine, and it's because of her that I actually got a lot of like my jobs. Jackie is also like a keen like refer to people, and so yeah, it just like, you know, be nice to people. Don't be afraid to like reach out. Not everyone will get back to you, but the people who do get back to you will give you time, and you know, go to events, try and meet people also of like your same level. And so like if you become good friends with people who are also of the same, like classmates and things like that, then maybe they'll refer you to jobs if there's like openings, things like that. Yeah, I think like the first many of my jobs, they were like all referrals. And it's not until recently that like I could apply and kind of get in the door.
Okay. What if people who didn't start out as a designer, who does not have a classmate, and for example, some people came from an IT background, they have a lot of IT friends, but they not necessarily have a lot of UX friends. What other ways they can go to, places they can go to do more networking?
Yeah, I mean, like meetups are great. I mean, like 2020 and I guess like 2021 has been like super weird. But yeah, like going to events is really good. I think the hard thing about events is like if you go with some friends, it's like really hard to meet people. So I remember I went to I think like the Design Thinkers convention this one year. And I remember like me and this other girl, we were like by ourselves. So we just like became friends. And we just started talking to all the presenters. And so that was great. And so we just like ended up meeting a bunch of other people who were kind of on their own. But it takes like a lot of energy to do that, to like meet people. But I think like these kinds of meetups are nice. They're like pretty relaxed. It's hard to meet people though and like to get to know people. I remember like the Women in Tech, there was like a pretty good event because they had a couple of like icebreakers so that it wasn't just like you in a room with like a drink. They actually got you to talk to people. Yeah, so I think it depends on the event. I do think events are great though, for like for meeting people, because usually there's like icebreakers.
Yeah,
for like the in-person ones.
but there's a lot of events right now happening on Zoom or less about personal event. Do you have any like a tips to give anyone who what they can do to reach out to the guest speaker like you or the peers in the same events? Like how do they stand out? How do they make them memorable to you? So when they reach out to you and network to you, they can, you see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of tough because like, I don't know, like there's like a lot of people and like, I feel like I'm just like talking the whole time. So in like Zoom events, I think they're a little bit harder. I think like the way to make maybe Zoom events a little bit better is, I don't know, maybe if we like started organizing like icebreakers or like breakout rooms or something like that. Like I think breakout rooms of like 4 are really great. You kind of get to know the people, they'll exchange names. Kind of
try that next time.
So that's kind of great. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I feel free to like reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you do reach out to me on LinkedIn, please send me a message, because I like, if you don't send me a message, then I don't know where it's from, and then I'll probably ignore it, which I would feel really bad for. But please send a message if you do.
All right. I will put your LinkedIn link in the chat box below, and then I will, in the meantime, I will let somebody else come up and ask you questions. Give me a second. Go ahead, guys.
Okay, the next one is from Crystal.
Hi, it's me again. I wanted to ask you, because earlier you mentioned some of your friends who work in corporate for a long time, they are too afraid to change their career because they're stuck, and then they find out they're missing skills that they don't have, and then they're scared to change. What are those missing skills that you find them, like they find themselves are missing and afraid to, change a job?
Yeah, so I find what tends to happen is someone who stays at a job really long ends up doing a lot more soft skill stuff than hard skills. So like the kind of higher you get, like I had a friend who, she just, I think within a few years became like a design manager, but like didn't really have all the product design skills. And so when she tried to apply for jobs, like she wasn't really a manager, she was sort of like the de facto lead because she was like the most senior designer. And so she didn't feel super comfortable, and nor did she want to be a design manager. But she might not have had enough like actual product design skills at that point, because she's doing like so much just kind of like stakeholder management and things like that. So in cases like that, I mean, I guess the thing to recommend, and like I've done this, is go back on projects that you like didn't like. You can revamp them for your portfolio. Or maybe there was like an internal project that you tried to work on, just like work on those skills. Yeah, there's like several things in my portfolio where I like didn't quite finish the product, or it wasn't quite that good, and I just actually made it better for my portfolio. I just like improved the final product so that it will look better on my portfolio. So that's like a way to kind of bridge out of that, if you feel like you're stuck in that.
I'm actually pretty surprised, because like I thought that they would be pretty good with their hard skills. Like I'm not surprised with the soft skills, but then the hard skills part, they're not good. Well, not good, but they're not as confident anymore.
Yeah. The other thing that happens is people get really stuck in like an industry. So they're really good at like this really narrow industry, but like the general like tech world, they just don't really get. So I know a friend who works in like health, for example. So there's like really particular nuances and like limitations with like that system So like general tech, they were just not super comfortable with it. So that tends to happen too.
Yeah. Another question is like, before I let somebody else have the question, is like, what made them want to change their jobs then, if they're so, you know, expert in that field, in that position, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think a lot of people just need change. Like maybe their coworkers aren't good anymore, or they're like, I've been here for like 6 years. I kind of want to do something new. That happens. Or like the company's not where it was when I started. It's like a different company. So I feel like I need to change. Yeah. Like for me, ultimately, like the reason I left Axiom Zen was like, it just wasn't the company that I joined. It, you know, we started at 12 people. We were like 200 and something by the time we left. It was moving at a different pace. It was different technologies. And I'm like, okay, I think I need something different. So that happens.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you.
And then we have one last question from Matthias.
Oh, hello, it's me.
Hey,
Hello, Amy. Hi, Daniel. Hello, everybody. I would like to ask about the material of design at tech startups. Like, do the teams usually have people dedicated to research ops and also design ops frequently, or product designs need to focus in all of these parts at the process?
Yeah, this really depends on the team and the size. So at Asana, we were slowly ramping up to this. We just had hired our first like design ops person. There actually was a pretty like established research team. But like the company I'm at right now, like it's literally just me. So it depends on like the maturity of the company, kind of like what's needed in that company. I find a lot of Silicon Valley, like companies in Silicon Valley, like the big startups, have like a design ops person or team and like a full research team, and they have a bunch of designers. And then I find like a lot of the folks here are a bit more like a little bit of everything. Yeah, it just depends. Yeah. Is this question more just like a curiosity of like, or like, do you want to move into one of these roles?
I work. I'm work mainly as a product designer, but I have experience with all these roles. So it was a curiosity about the material of design in this segment in Canada.
Yeah, I would say here we're maybe like slightly less mature than I guess in the States, but we're getting there. There's like a lot of companies now where there's more companies now where I see they're hiring like a design ops person specifically.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of companies here now hiring researchers.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great. Do we have more questions?
No.
Oh, we're done. Great. Okay, so even though you still have questions in mind, but you haven't got a chance to type it out, or there's not enough time for you, that's okay, because we have a Facebook group and you have a LinkedIn group. You can always post your question there, and then we can get Amy to come on board and answer your questions as well. Just before today's event end, right? And then I'm just gonna have the volunteers to help me post the link right there, so you guys can join our group on the social media channel. One last thing before we go is my favorite event. It's the group photo, because it's nice to have a group photo, to have a good memory. We'll post that on the LinkedIn page as well. So if you can turn on your camera and then to give me a big smile, do a little hand gesture, and I will have somebody to take the screenshot for me. Are you guys ready? So I'm gonna do the countdown. 1, 2, 3.
Oops.
Awesome. Great. That's okay. No webcam is fine. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Amy, for your time today. And then I think you gave us a lot of great insights. And one last thing is, are you hiring at the moment?
At the moment, we're not hiring. We're probably looking to hire someone soon, however.
Okay, great.
But be on the lookout for a Thunkable
Sure.
job position.
Okay. If you're hiring, let me know, and then I will post it on the group as well.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for coming. And then stay tuned for our next month's event. The guest speaker will be confirmed very, very soon. And I hope you guys have a nice day and stay safe outside in the light of COVID. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Hi, Sam.
Bye.
Hi.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Daniel and team.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amy.